Hey ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. As always, it is Nick here, back with your daily crypto news and analysis. And today we're going to be talking about why I personally believe you should be holding 1000 Stellar Lumens or XLM for what the future has to hold, because I do believe that this asset has the potential to really hit major high targets. We're going to be talking about those targets, as well as, going in depth on why I personally believe that XLM is a solid, sound investment for the long-term growth of a lot of these major markets that we will be talking about and discussing. Also, just to quickly tell you guys that, a lot of things have changed since, its original fork of XRP going all the way back to as far as 2014. Things have been growing fairly rapidly, especially in regards to the P2P market and cross-border sector. And this is why I think that XLM is prospering in terms of its ecosystemal growth. And let's just jump into it and let's talk about where I could, really see this asset going in the future. So overall, we compare it to XRP a lot, or I should say a lot of people do. I personally don't like to compare these two. I think that they're not competitors. I think, a lot of these DLT technologies will kind of complement each other at some point in time, especially through interoperability. I've discussed this multiple times, and we are seeing that come to fruition with a lot of, sort of innovative ideas, especially in regards to CBDCs. So I'm actually fairly excited for what the future has to hold for a lot of these DLTs. Now, I do just want you guys to understand that right now the market cap, or I should say the leading asset in the market cap, is Bitcoin. Now, the funny thing about this is that we are still in a Bitcoin market, but Bitcoin itself should not be worth $1.1 trillion for many reasons behind it. I have gone into, aspect on this idea as well. But considering the fact that something like Bitcoin is hitting $1.1 trillion, it goes to show you that pretty much what the future has to hold for a lot of these assets to actually have strong use cases instead of a speculative store of value. They do have a ton of upside potential. So let's actually talk about what XLM is actually doing, because right now XLM is sitting at about 37 cents or a $9 billion market cap with a circulating supply of roughly about 24 billion and a total supply of, I think it's around 50 billion exact. So yeah, it's about 50 billion exact almost, with an extra 1.8 million there, but it's all good. So first off, let's talk about a few price targets that I personally can see this having. So at Bitcoin's overall market cap, we would be worth about $47.68. Personally speaking, I could see a lot of these assets being worth $2 trillion plus. You might be wondering, well, why do you personally see that? Well, first off, at $2 trillion, Stellar would be worth about $82.88. Why do I think that it will be worth $2 trillion? Well, why is Apple worth $2 trillion? Okay, so I always like to talk about stocks in comparison with crypto because, overall, when we're talking about what Apple is doing and a lot of those, companies within the stock market exchange, a lot of them are just kind of distributing companies. Apple, for an example, they have their phones made overseas and they distribute it to customers. The only thing that makes Apple worth $2 trillion is just their products. The same goes for a lot of these crypto assets, right? Except it's the fact that when we're talking about investing into something like XLM or Stellar Lumens, we are not investing into a product. No, we are investing into technology that has the potential to truly disrupt and change the way that we look at everyday transactional volume and money flows. I think that that is the biggest problem with a lot of this market, is people think that when you look at something in terms of a $2 trillion market cap, they just think that you're absolutely ridiculous. When we're talking about a lot of these assets, I think that they're going to be well worth, more than any stock could possibly be worth, because of the technology behind them that drives the overall success of these projects. We are actually seeing that come to fruition right now. We go all the way back to pretty much this, right? We talk about the Federal Reserve with these ISO 222 tokens and this technology going live fairly soon. We're seeing, a lot of these dates move forward in a fairly fast, sort of movement. We're talking about November of 2022. With a lot of these systems actually being updated currently right now, including this November. So when we're talking about ISO 222, this is something to not disregard. For anybody who is new here or doesn't understand what ISO 222 means, essentially it is a messaging format for banks and major, financial institutions, and so that could actually transact and kind of gossip, if you will, in quotation marks, with one another in a sense. So it's a new payment messaging format that is overall going to update a lot of the systems that we utilize on a day-to-day basis. And a lot of the speculation around crypto is that a lot of the ISO 222 tokens will be utilized within this process. Those tokens are XRP, XLM, IOTA, XDC, and I believe Algorand, yes. So there is a few other ones possibly that I am missing, but overall those are the main few that I know from heart. But overall, when we're talking about where XLM could actually play a huge role in this system, well, first off, we look at the power of Stellar Lumens and really what it could actually do. So we see here that the power of this is, an open interoperable payment and currency system. Essentially, you could do a lot with this asset. First off, you could tokenize anything on Stellar. This is pretty much all your own assets, and there's a lot of, overall benefits to doing so as well. And here are those benefits outlined. Now we also see here you could trade tokens peer-to-peer. This is more so for P2P payments. It's not so much focusing on B2B and institutional investment sort of ideas, but they also focus on those areas, but it's not their main focus point. More so they are going for P2P, with example, the MoneyGram partnership, it's more so focused on P2P adoption and retail use cases. And of course, you could transform currency as you send it as well. So this is essentially that on-demand liquidity service that XRP has, essentially, where you could pretty much send one currency and it will pretty much transform into another, and then of course transform it again. And this is pretty much that process overall. So it's very interesting in terms of the use cases behind Stellar and what the power could actually unlock. Now I'm just going to show you guys two overall case studies that are fairly interesting, and we're going to be talking about why. So these two are Cowrie and also Tempo. So Cowrie Integrated Systems is a financial technology company that provides value-added services over electronic payment networks. These two are actually kind of doing the same thing, by the way. And again, these are pegged to certain currencies. Like this one is currently pegged to the Nigerian Naira. I hope that I said Naira right. It might be Naira, but it is tomato, whatever. But we just hear Tempo is an electronic payment institution and the principal EU anchor for Stellar blockchain payments. Tempo acts quickly to ensure pricing, foreign exchange rates, agent opportunities, and customer service remain highly competitive in regards to local markets. Now you might be wondering, well, why are these two even utilizing Stellar? Well, these are all fintech, companies. For an example, traditional remittance flows can be slow and cumbersome, restricted by how legacy systems currently operate. Money transfer operators, or MTOs, charge senders high fees to make up for increased operating costs and technical inefficiencies. Receivers end up losing value due to the many times their money passes through unfavorable exchange rates before it arrives at the end destination. We see here financial institution, intermediary banks, beneficiary banks, and of course, this is pretty much that breakdown of it going through all these exchanges. And by the time that you actually get your money, it could go through many hands, and with those hands comes a lot of fees. Over the years, Tempo has seen customers struggle to make international payments as global regulators become stricter and financial systems fail to streamline operations. Tempo needed a solution that would remove the friction from the remittance flow while being easy, fast, and transparent for their customers to use. International payments are also difficult to conduct if they involve less global traded currencies, putting people who want to exchange those currencies in a tight spot. This is the problem Cowrie Exchange identified with their customers who wanted to exchange the Nigerian Naira, but had no cost-effective way to do so. Now, what's interesting about these two overall partnerships is that when we're looking at Cowrie Exchange, right, super fast cross-border payments for Nigeria built on blockchain. Now, the best part about this is that it's all focused on cross-border flows, and we're going to talk about why that's huge. But we just hear it provides businesses with a next-generation solution that increases speed and lowers the cost of international payments to and from Nigeria. Now, how are they doing this? Well, it's all through Stellar Lumens. It doesn't really... when we're even looking at it, right, Cowrie Exchange is developed on the Stellar blockchain, which is an open-source decentralized network for storing and moving money. Again, it's all in front of everyone's faces on how we are going to pretty much march into this new age of technology. Now, when we're talking about a few of these use cases, are these huge use cases? Yes, on a huge scale, considering the fact that they're not focused on massive, areas around the world, but these are still huge, ideas, or I should say, technologies that are brought to fruition, being utilized on a day-to-day basis. Again, when we're looking at tempo, quick money transfers whenever, wherever, licensed and supervised by Banque de France. Why do you understand, or why do you think that a lot of these banks and these major companies are looking at Stellar Lumens? Well, it's because they are seeing the massive upside potential of utilizing technology like this on a day-to-day basis, saving massive amounts of money on those nice cross-border flows, as well as being way more efficient to actually move and be utilized on a wider scale at such a massive rate. This is truly the future when you're looking at a lot of these financial institutions and these banks that want to use or adopt crypto. And we're seeing that around the world, not so much in the US with, innovation being stifled right now, but when we're talking about where that major innovation actually comes from, well, it comes from assets like Stellar Lumens. That's why when I talk about where we could be worth, once we start moving trillions of dollars a day, which that will happen at some point in time, that's where we pretty much march into a utility market and not so much look at Bitcoin, but actually look at these major assets that we are holding. Now, these are just the basis of it. There's a lot more use cases on Stellar, but we do know that Stellar is made and built for a lot of other things. For example, the biggest name in the game is Swift right now. A lot of people look at Swift and they don't think that it's anything too crazy, but it actually is. First off, I just want you guys to understand that when we're talking about what's actually happening out there in terms of this, huge market that we are looking at, we look at how much money is actually traded on a day-to-day basis. It is $5.1 trillion a day, and this is coming from the Bank of International Settlements. This is mostly coming from Swift. This is all flowing over Swift. Now, you might be wondering, well, how do you know that? Well, it's fairly simple, right? Look at this. It's just trying to understand the volume of electronic transactions generally to an order of magnitude. It's in the quadrillions of dollars per year. According to this document from the U.S. Treasury, Swift handles about $5 trillion per day, or given about 250 business days per year, about $1.25 quadrillion a year. Now, you might be wondering, well, that is a lot of money, but how does something like Stellar Lumens come into play? Well, all of these payments that are happening over Swift are all utilizing Nostro Vostro accounts that are all pre-approved, so they are also fairly expensive to move, and they are inefficient. They are very slow. For an example, a lot of those payments take 3 to 5 days to fully settle. With something like Stellar Lumens, we could be seeing a massive, we're talking innovation happening around the world, because not only is Swift handling this many transactions, but Chips is handling $400 trillion per year. Fedwire handles about $900 trillion per year. So we're talking huge, massive amounts of money flowing every year over these expensive cross-border payments and these terrible legacy systems that are utilizing massive high fees at a slow rate. And when we're talking about this is not scalable. This is absolutely way too expensive to move. And you might not be thinking about it, but overall, when we're talking about cross-border payments, it's $30 to $100 plus in fees, per transaction. So when we're talking about what Swift or any of these, major networks could benefit from utilizing or building with a DLT like Stellar Lumens or XRP or any other DLT technology, the upside potential is saving a ton of money on those transactions, in terms of fees, as well as helping it scale efficiently through speed, as well as, allowing a lot more transparency and so forth. For an example, here are those major challenges for a lot of those cross-border payments. And of course, this does come from a lot of, cross-border payments flows from Swift. We even see payment network aggregators, which would essentially be XLM at the end of the day. And of course, we do see proprietary payment networks. But here are those major challenges, right? Speed, limited transparency and dependability, high cost. We see lack of interoperability. Again, things that are focused on with DLTs in crypto, limited coverage, and of course, limited accessibility. Now, I'm just going to say right now, when we're looking at something like Stellar, we do see here only digital, modern, fast, and open to all. This is the focus point on a lot of these major assets. We even see here, how can cross-border payments happen? Well, it's fairly simple. Here's the traditional way. Here is, again, pretty much the B2C or B2E payments. This is all traditional. Now, again, when we're talking about the Stellar solution, we just hear using Stellar for cross-border payments solves the time and money issues that come with traditional B2B payment methods. Perform the same transaction in minutes for a fraction of a penny and forget about the high exchange rates and banking fees for good. And that is the overall viewpoints that we're trying to get to. For an example, the typical time to settle is 2 to 5 business days depending on the banks and countries involved, and the fees can be as high as 6%. You might not think that 6% is, that crazy. You're probably thinking, wow, 6%, that's like nothing, especially for something like a $100 payment or something. But these are massive, banking giants. Just imagine moving, $100,000 and paying $6,000 in fees, or $1 million and paying $60,000 in fees, or $10 million and paying $600,000 in just fees. Yeah, it gets astronomical very, very fast. Now, of course, when we're talking about the overall end goal of what Stellar is trying to do, it's all making these payment flows a lot faster, a lot cheaper, and of course, a lot more scalable. That is the end goal for a lot of these assets. Do I think that they could achieve that? 100%. We are seeing trials come up on a day-to-day basis, even in regards to XRP in terms of ODL. Now, of course, we do see here Stellar for CBDCs. CBDCs are a great way to get into the idea of inclusiveness through banking, as well as allowing for a lot more accessibility through digital payments. This is truly the future when you're talking about what's happening right now with, again, ISO 222 tokens. This is truly what we are going to be marching into. Now, of course, we do see our Stellar for fintech applications. This is pretty much the idea where we're talking about, when we go all the way back to XRP and what they're doing in the fintech zones, this is pretty much the idea where Stellar comes into play, right? These are all the fintech areas. We talk about Tempo, we already did, right? Cowrie, we talk about Flutterware, or Flutterwave, Vibrant, Wire, Leaf. All of these major use cases all utilizing Stellar, Lumens, or XLM on a day-to-day basis. And here again is the benefits, stability, interoperability, efficiency. And again, here's the way that it works. It's fairly simple. It goes from sender to recipient in a matter of seconds. All of these major DLT assets, I know a lot of people think, well, why would I invest in XLM when I could get into HBAR or XR? Listen, all of these assets are going to do incredibly well. The pie is big enough for all of these assets to eat. Why do I, try to mention the cross-border payment flows every single time? It's because I'm trying to explain to you how much money there actually is out there to truly be disrupted. Just so you guys know, just the global cross-border payments flows and remittance services is a $39.9 trillion market by 2026, and it's $37.15 trillion just in 2020 alone. There is a lot of money out there where a lot of these assets could truly eat. And again, when we're talking about, remittances or remittances, I know a lot of people kind of say it differently, but it is what it is. We do see each year over $500 billion of value is transferred cross-border through personal remittances. Now again, when we're talking about these are again those high cost fees for a lot of these payments. Well, when we're talking about those challenges, Stellar helps the entire time. First off, we do it through anchors. Anchors are licensed and regulated financial institutions, money services businesses, or fintech companies that provide fiat on/off ramps to the anchor country's banking system. Anchors often also provide stablecoins, one-to-one fiat-backed tokens that users can redeem for fiat at any time. Anchors handle local regulatory processes such as Know Your Customer and anti-money laundering. This is great because when we're talking about the Stellar Lumen, it's the Stellar network, I should say. It is utilizing these anchors, which could be MoneyGram, it could be, Tempo, it could be Crowley, all of those, right? So it goes hand in hand with a lot of those partnerships. And of course, this is how it gets broken down. This is what the user sees. Again, when we're talking about that same, app, it looks exactly the same for a lot of these apps that these partners are using. It's because it's the same exact thing. Now, again, they're even mentioning those same use cases that I already sent, or I already said, and here's the benefits, right? Speed, no pre-funding requirement, compliant, currency support, developer tools, global scale. There is so many benefits to the Stellar network. And again, here is the Laura sends money to Victor, make a transfer, Victor withdraws from his wallet. It's fairly clean, it's fairly simple. Anybody can pretty much do it. It's very, very easy. And again, the typical transaction is $200 to $300, with the average retail cost of these transfers runs 7 to 8%, usually collected in cash. So and sending costs can be as high as 15% when transferring money to people in developing economies. So these are fairly high fee problems. There's a lot of problems within these overall networks, and here are some major case studies on Stellar, by the way. It's so much more than just Tempo and Cowrie, and there's more than these as well, with MoneyGram and stuff joining the team. But what I'm trying to get to you guys is the fact that holding 1,000 Stellar could be extremely life-changing when we're talking about how much money will possibly flow over the Stellar network. Am I going to say that all of the money is going to flow over Stellar? Absolutely not. Because there's going to be so many other, in terms of what's happened throughout this market, there's going to be so many DLT technologies that are going to be utilized on a day-to-day basis in regards to the ISO 20022 adoption. If that does come to fruition, which it is, a lot of things are actually happening with this. Of course, this is from the Fed themselves. And of course, when we're talking about how many payment flows are going to be disrupted by a lot of this technology, distributed ledger technologies are on the rise right now. They're actually booming. A lot of companies and major businesses are actually adopting them at a massive rate right now. So when we're talking about Stellar being worth $2 trillion, I think that this is just the bottom line of it. I think $2 trillion is fairly reasonable. Now, if we're talking about something where we are worth $10 trillion, do we get there? At some point in time, we most likely do. I think that this market that we are in, this crypto market, it's going to grow at astronomical rates as we go on in time. I think a lot of these prices that we say, do I think Stellar is going to be worth $10 trillion anytime soon? Most likely not. But as we do march forward on in time, it will be at some point. And the reason why I believe that is because all of crypto is going to be adopted at a massive rate. And right now, yeah, sure, we live in a Bitcoin world where the market relies on Bitcoin mostly, and we just wait for the bull and bear markets, and it's kind of simple, it's kind of whatever. But once we get into a utility-driven market, which that is going to happen, these assets are going to increase in price fairly fast. Price appreciation is going to happen on a day-to-day rate because of how much utility and usability is going to be unlocked through these assets. And I don't have to tell you guys that. You probably already know that for yourselves. You guys have been doing this work alongside me. You guys have been studying these markets. You have been studying these assets. XRP, XLM, all these major assets are huge, major innovative technology, especially for disruption in a major market like cross-border payment flows and payments in general. There is a ton of money flowing over these major networks. $5 trillion a day on Swift alone. Understand the main point that I'm trying to get to you guys, which is, at the end of the day, these massive DLT technologies and these major fintech assets are going to move massive percentages of that money on a day-to-day basis. Even if it's 10% of that, it's huge. So with that being said, if you guys have made it to this point in this video, comment down below XLM to the moon. And with that being said, I hope that you all enjoyed this video. If you guys did, definitely leave a like, subscribe, turn notifications on. If you guys want more free content, you guys are more than welcome to